Welcome to the Gould-Fish Pod. I am Matt Gould.
And I'm Ryan Fish.
And we're coming at you with something a little different today. We do have a little bit of a new format, which includes the first ever official guest. And it's not Big Dave. I don't count him as a guest.
He's a correspondent.
He's an official correspondent. So we got a little bit of a new format for you today, but some of it's still going to ring true to the few faithful fans that listen weekly. Love you guys. So we're going to start
huge shout out to the followers and listeners.
Huge shout out to the few of you. Leave us a comment at Gould-Fish Pod on Twitter or on iTunes, or email us at gouldfishpod@gmail.com. Tell us what you think of the new format. First off, disc golf. I know that you only played once, Fish, and I've played twice, but we do have something to talk about today because this past week you and I engaged in a one-on-one battle.
That we did. We did have a disc golf throwdown.
One-on-one, mano-a-mano at the Knock Knolls Park. Fish, do you care to report the final score to the loyal listeners?
I believe it was -2 for you, and I played even par, so I ended even. So, unfortunately, I took the L. I just have to bounce back and get my mind right for the next throwdown.
So on record, Matt Gould 1-0 over Ryan Fish since the creation of the Gould-Fish Pod.
Correct. I'm still the number one contender. Even though I lost, still the number one contender.
And we're not even going to bring up how it's a strong lack of contenders that has left you in that spot. Although I did play yesterday and lose, but it was an unofficial non-title match. It took us several holes to even figure out what we were going to do as far as what we were going to score, how we were going to play. So I said, look, we can't decide this multiple holes in. So this is an unofficial contest. So I'm still champion as far as I'm concerned.
Was it a early DQ and you just kept wrestling through it? Is that
well, it was originally going to be a 2-on-1, and then it was something else. It was going to be a handicap match, and then it was going to be no holds barred. And then all of a sudden, we had played 4 holes, and someone had already birdied the first 4 holes there. And then they wanted to change the rules. I was like, no, listen. We all still have a chance. If he continues at this pace, he's going to throw the best round of all time. That's not happening today. He can't do this every hole. Let's just press on individually. And it wasn't until like a hole or 2 later that we had officially just said, look, every man for himself. And I'm like, look, he can't just make it official 6 holes in. So I reserved my right, non-title. So
that's, game was under protest.
Yes. Well, no. See, we didn't have to protest because we settled on exhibition contest.
Okay, there you go. There was some agreement that was made.
Yes, it was an eliminator match, and I did not eliminate any contenders. So, you've got some people coming up the rear.
Okay, and we do have some newcomers as well, and Cal. So,
yeah, and I fear him and his massive forehand. I'll have to get out on the chains with him one time.
Yes.
Into the wrestling news for the week we go. Fish. Before I kind of talk about all the stuff that I've heard, I'm just curious from someone who doesn't listen to the similar audio that I listen to as far as wrestling goes. What do you know about the Vince McMahon situation?
That he had paid some hush money for an affair, I guess. That's what I have heard. And then I have also read on Twitter that after his promo, it had like 26,000 dislikes like right away or something.
That number is doubled at this point. Yes, wow. Up to 51,000. Okay, so here's everything that I've kind of heard. So a couple days ago, or about a week ago, I guess at this point, when all of this first started, it was a Wall Street Journal article that had said that, yes, there had been $3 million in hush money paid to go along with an NDA about the affair that you're talking about. The person who is the subject of the affair and $3 million in the NDA, that person was hired as a paralegal by WWE, and they were hired at $100,000 salary. Eventually, and this is the part that's kind of gray area, blurring lines a little bit, where we'll see where it all shakes out. This is the woman that had the affair with Vince McMahon. Her salary was eventually increased to $200,000. So her salary was doubled. So aside how you feel about having someone sign an NDA for something like this, if it was $3 million that came out of Vince's own pocket, I mean, whatever. That's not then, he had someone sign an NDA, paid them and paying them $3 million is a part of it. The point that's in question is if the affair had already begun and then the salary was increased to $200,000, now he's using company money from a publicly traded company and having an affair with a subordinate as he is the big boss of everything. So if that is all, if the timeline of all that works out, apparently that is a big no-no, not allowed at all. And he could end up in trouble or whatever. And there's a guy, John Laurinaitis, known as Johnny Ace, who is involved with this all as well. My personal beliefs on the matter is that Johnny Ace is just the next guy in line to be a fall guy, and that in a couple months, Vince will be in the same spot that he's always been. But that's everything.
He's just next on the chopping block.
I mean, that's what I think, because I can't, if this is the only thing that ends up coming out, unless there's a line of people who are like, oh yeah, this happened to me, unless there's an orchestra of people following suit, I just can't imagine a world in which Vince ends up having to actually hold any responsibility for this. And as of now, he has stepped down as CEO and chairman of the board, and Stephanie McMahon has replaced him, but he's still running creative. It's still his show. And that couldn't be more apparent when Brock Lesnar versus Roman Reigns was booked again. So
yes, I did. I was about to say that as he steps down, Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns was booked.
Yeah, and look, if you believe in the world and that it's a coincidence, that's fine. But I just can't bring myself to believe that at all. So that's that situation. It's a little weird. I mean, and this wasn't like, oh, this happened in 2012. Apparently, she was hired in 2019. So,
oh wow!
So it's all recent. It's all in the past 3 or 4 years, which means at the time Vince would have been 72, 71 years old, however old he is. Dude, it's just what? I don't know what playground he lives on. It's just so weird to me.
Yeah, yes. No, it is weird.
He capped it all off by appearing on SmackDown. Did you see that?
I did watch the promo on Twitter.
Yes, it was very short. He just read WWE's intro catchphrase that plays when the show starts, and
it's forever, the future.
Then, now, together, forever, or something like that. I think that's what it is. But then he threw the mic and he walked out. And as he came to the ring, he was singing his own song, and people were literally bowing down to him in the crowd. If John Laurinaitis doesn't just end up the fall guy and he ends up out of the company, I can't even envision another ending after seeing all those people bow down to him on live TV.
It would be hard pressed otherwise to believe.
Yeah, I feel like the people who are just not as educated about what wrestling is, they're going to look at that and go, oh, man, how bad could he be? And the answer is pretty bad, depending on what you watch.
Right.
But that's that situation. It's a little weird, but it's big news, and we'll see how it ends up shaking out. But this has not been necessarily a positive week, because the next thing we have to talk about is Jeff Hardy, he got a DUI and was driving without a suspended license. I don't necessarily know which one is better or worse, and it wasn't even his car. So it was a totally different car. And it's just a wild scenario. He's had a long history of a issue with addiction, and that sucks. But at the same time, he's been a repeat offender and seemingly always ends out coming out on top and back on TV, and everything is fine. And I know he's a very nice guy, so people are sympathetic to him. But what happens now with Jeff Hardy being on AEW and things like that? Where do they go?
Yeah, I have no idea. I mean, like you said, a repeat offender when it's coming to this stuff. I mean, like you said, it helps that he is a really nice guy, and a lot of people do care for him and want to see him get better. But there's also things in life like, Uber, like don't be driving under the influence as well.
And I've seen a lot of reactions. Like there were some wrestling journalists who'd said like, dude, you're Jeff Hardy. You can get a ride. What does him being Jeff Hardy have to do with his ability to get a ride? Anyone that has a job can pay for an Uber.
Yes.
Like you don't need to be a celebrity to hail an Uber, to download an app, and to purchase
a ride. I mean, he's not going to ask like some random person. Like, I think that's what they're trying to get. Like, oh, just go ask this person, say, hey, I'm Jeff Hardy. Can I get a ride? Like, that's not how the real world works.
No, that shouldn't even be a part of the equation.
Right.
Which, and that just speaks to, there's a whole psychological aspect to that. That's like, Jeff Hardy is such a nice guy that part of the narrative is giving him a pass unintentionally. It's like, oh, you're Jeff Hardy. You could have gotten a ride. Like, oh, Jeff Hardy's such a nice guy. Like, how can you not end up getting a ride? Like, that has nothing to do with it. And I want him more than anything to figure out his issues because he is obviously people speak very highly of him. Historically, an important figure in wrestling for sure. But at the same time, like, are people's lives being in danger worth?
Right. That's what I'm saying. That's so he shouldn't be driving. He shouldn't be out on the roads.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, at this point, like, how do you even allow that guy to drive ever? And I know he went out of his way to drive without a license and with someone else's car, but like, who do you get the car from? Like, what's going on here?
Yeah. I mean, at a certain point is, how do you not like literally have a full-time babysitter, like maybe just like a chauffeur, like just dedicated to him?
I know. Like,
so.
Now, if you wanted to say, "Hey, look, you're Jeff Hardy. You have lots of money. Why don't you get someone to kind of hang around?"
It's a different argument there.
That's a different argument, but I don't know. It's a good thing he's a nice guy, but I don't know how nice you need to be a repeat offender and be like, "Okay, cool, let's just let him go back on TV and do whatever he does." And then I don't know. It's obviously a pattern, and you hope he gets better. But like, I don't know. The Hardys collectively are pretty old, and he needs a extended absence from television. No storyline involving the Hardys is more important than figuring out this situation for Jeff. And it's just, he's old. So like, how long can he afford to spend off of TV and not wrestling and then come back and wrestle? And his brother is even older than him. So if you believe the reports that the Hardys were originally supposed to win this ladder match,
which I do think that they were supposed to win.
Well. Then wait, are you still going to go forward with those plans when Matt Hardy is even older and Jeff Hardy is even older than he is? I don't know. I don't, because it feels like a prolonged absence is required here. But how prolonged can you go and then bring him back and everything still be functioning physically?
And still capture the magic as well.
Exactly, which apparently that hasn't been a problem because, like we said, repeat offender, guy comes back every time smelling like roses, and it's just tough.
Definitely puts AEW in a bind for sure, and obviously puts, a lot of strain as well.
Yep. But something that's not as tragic, but equally as intriguing is Sasha Banks. The latest on Sasha Banks is that she actually has her attorneys working on getting her a release, which is a new strategy taken to getting out of WWE. You've had people publicly request their release by putting something on Twitter, because in that situation, you've publicly and politely asked for your release and they told you no, which makes them the bad guy. There's the strategy where they just go to WWE internally, say, hey, look, you haven't used me. Like, I just, even if you were to use me, this place just isn't for me. I'd like to go. That doesn't work. That's trying to handle things quietly. You've had the Jon Moxley approach where he stays quiet, finishes his contract, because that means he gets to continue to collect royalties on things that he has done in the past. Move on, find your home. This is a new strategy. For a long time, people have said, how can these WWE contracts hold up, legally speaking, because they're independent contractors that are not independently allowed to do anything. We have yet to see publicly like this, someone go to their attorneys and be like, yeah, like figure out a way to get me out of this. And I feel like when you bring in attorneys to the matter, it's only a matter of time before they're just like, okay, fine, you can go, because it's just not worth the trouble. But Sasha Banks, real name Mercedes Vernado, I believe is how you pronounce the last name. If she does get released, like, what do we think is going to happen there?
I definitely think that she's coming over to AEW. I mean, there's no other way. But I also think that she is going to make the push for Hollywood too and do some movies since she was in The Mandalorian. So I do think that she wants to do both. But I think that she does want to give like Hollywood more of a viable opportunity. But yeah, I mean, that is a interesting approach. We've seen tons of different ways. And probably the latest would have been Mustafa Ali just sitting out and saying, I'm not doing it. And then just comes back and wrestles.
Which is what Pac actually did do. Mm-hmm. He told them, I'm not wrestling. You can let my contract run out, when they wouldn't release him. And he sat out for a year.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't do anything. But Ali, obviously, and that's a strategy they've taken with a lot of people. And more often than not, it results in them eventually finding a role and being on television again. So it's rare that the wrestler ends up out and doing what they want when that is the approach taken. But Pac was a rare exception there.
Yeah, but I did see, was it Thunder Rosa wanting to, I don't know if she said or something, but I thought I saw on Twitter that Thunder Rosa wanted to wrestle Sasha Banks.
I think Sasha Banks is great, and she's a tremendous wrestler. And I think she gets a bad rep for being the complainer. But I think at the end of the day, she falls in the category of one of those people where she just wants what's being done to mean something. Because when you listen to some of her arguments, you can disagree with the way that she's gone about portraying her displeasures. But the arguments are usually along the lines of, she's not asking to be world champion. She's just asking when she's given a direction that the direction is actually followed up on. And that it's not just thrown aside, like when they lost the tag titles at WrestleMania, or this year she was primed and ready for a WrestleMania match that Ronda Rousey ended up taking the spot of.
Yes.
And they said, hey, look, we're going to do this tag title thing. We've got all this stuff for you. And she's like, okay, cool. And then it ended up being nothing, which all she wanted was what they had originally started to build to mean something. She wasn't asking to be the biggest star. She just wanted a direction, which AEW fits that bill, because when AEW does things very well, there's usually a very clear direction.
Yes. Very easy to see and understand.
Yes, and they go off the rails, but for the most part, you're right.
I would say with the clearest one right now has been Jade Cargill. If we want to talk about women's division, I mean, she is, obviously incredible, but I mean, the direction she's going, she's, just keeps going higher and higher. So, I mean, it's hard to see the easy direction of that. And then what Sasha Banks is doing and just saying, why can't you just do a fraction of that?
Yeah. So I understand that, but I think that what she's ultimately going to look for immediately is that role where she's the wrestler half the year, but is a Hollywood star the other half of the year, where she can come in when there is direction and when there is something to push for, but otherwise is just going to try and look for roles in TV shows and movies, which she's already had in The Mandalorian. And so I think that she's probably going to look for a mix of the two. And if that works out for her, that's what she'll do. But, clearly she doesn't want to be in WWE. So, right. And, I think a lot of WWE is finding people to fill roles. They have a very interesting direction when they look to fill people in on the main roster. And I think they look at Sasha Banks and think we can just find someone to play the Sasha Banks role. Good wrestler, athletic, attractive, can talk pretty easily. I think they just look at it like, oh, we can find.
Yeah, she's a complete package. Yeah. She can do it all.
And I think they look at it as, oh, all she does is talk well. Oh, all she does is wrestle well. Oh, all she does is have this kick-ass, badass attitude that we can find people who check those boxes. But I just don't think that they properly estimate how difficult that is.
Yeah, I mean, she's had a lot of, big time moments as well. So it's hard to, equate that to money wise.
Yeah. Yeah. Before we kind of jump into the topics for the week and bring on our first guest, Fish, what did you think of both the Rampage and Dynamite shows for the week?
Yeah, I thought Dynamite was actually a stronger showing than last week.
Yeah.
So that was nice to see. Rampage was a little bit of a lackluster one. I mean, obviously it's still, I keep repeating myself, still my favorite, but this one was definitely harder to justify as being, I think this took the place from Dynamite of last week. and just filled it in. So like good matches, just no direction.
Yeah, and I agree kind of with the direction you're taking there. I was a lot more interested in the things that they put on the Dynamite show this week. There was some little things that we'll get into that were like kind of perplexing to me and confused me as far as building to a big time joint pay-per-view goes. But the thing that I was just not enthused with, and we'll talk about it, was you've got, at the time Rampage went on the air, you had 3 shows left to build what is, I consider, a pretty important pay-per-view.
Oh, it's massive.
And I don't know, like there was some things here and there, like tiny stuff, but nothing they actually did for a bulk of the time they spent on television built anything. And I think that's just a poor use of time. Like, not that anybody on the show was bad, that there were bad matches, but, you know, as the Forbidden Door approaches, I expect there to be more. And it's almost like a bulk of the show had almost nothing to do with it.
Right. I mean, with, you know, like you said, a cross-promotional, you know, event, first time ever, you know, with AEW and New Japan. I mean, you would like to see Dynamite and Rampage be 75% towards the Forbidden Door.
I know the first thing you wanted to talk about was the commentary from Rampage, so go ahead and give me your thoughts.
I think this one was very kind of niche, like listening, and I thought it was really incredible what Taz had did, and actually going to get a huge compliment to Excalibur on this one for actually sidelining himself during this. But it was when Dante Martin was wrestling Jon Moxley, and William Regal was saying that it's going to be a learning experience for, you know, Dante Martin wrestling him and whatever. And Taz is like, well, Dante Martin doesn't give a shit. He's here to win. He doesn't care about a learning experience. And like, I felt like they like kept talking about like, oh, like Dante is going to, you know, learn so much. And Taz is like, just, I don't know, just is like, he's here to win. Like, I don't know what you guys are talking about. And I think Excalibur like just really removed himself from like the conversation and let Taz kind of, you know, take the reins on that one. I don't know if you remember hearing that.
No, I remember the conversation. And I think you're right. Like that's actually kind of the stuff. And I would have given this credit had we done the original format because it was something that I did notice, but there were actually multiple times both on Dynamite and Rampage where there was less Excalibur because people were in the middle of explaining something, or there was knowledge that they were providing in greater context that would have otherwise just been something yelled across the screen. So
right.
Also, kudos to Excalibur for explaining what IWGP actually is when he was talking about the titles on Rampage or on Dynamite, when he was explaining what being an IWGP champion actually means. So I thought he did a really good job with that. Like, those are all things that are important. So I did notice what you were saying for sure. And a separate from Excalibur's part in this is that I love that Taz was like, okay, look, no, he's out there to try and like beat Jon Moxley. Like, he's not going in there with the idea of, oh, well, let's see where I'm at. Like, I get where William Regal was going, but as I have said before on the show, you know, everybody is a rising star, or they're already a star, or they're already one of the best in the world. It's like there's so much hyperbole thrown around on the show, and they've so blatantly tried to recapture the Dante Martin magic that it was nice to hear somebody like, okay, Dante Martin is out there to win. So that aspect of it I thought was pretty great as well.
Yeah, and I know that it was somewhere else in the match, not like that match, but another match. I wanted to say it was the Jade Cargill versus Willow Nightingale. And kind of that same kind of thing popped up, and it was like, they said something about like, oh, Willow Nightingale is going to, you know, is going to benefit so much from this. And Taz is like, she can very well dethrone her. Like, she's this. Exactly. And I'm like, and that's when I think like Excalibur, and I think Taz and Excalibur are great together. But Excalibur really like let Taz kind of take the reins on this Rampage and actually kind of like go off. And like, I felt like it was awesome because Taz is like, no, like these people are here to win. Like, it is like a winning. Obviously we know it's a fixed outcome, but like, they're still like in the process of trying to win. Like, they're not like here, like, oh, let me test myself. Even testing himself, like, I'm still going to try to beat you.
And what you're touching on is exactly what I've had the biggest issue with. It's ultimately the biggest gripe I've had that has persisted from the very beginning of AEW up until now. And that is exactly what you're saying. I think Taz, and it's funny because Excalibur just promoted a different style of wrestling and speaks about wrestling different. But one of the things, especially when Jericho's on commentary, you see this too. They talk like the outcome is fixed. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like, even if it's a segment or if it's just an interview, there's way too many things that are like inside wrestling that are just used as lines on commentary. You know what I'm saying?
You're right.
And like Taz, and I say it's interesting because Taz would have grown up watching all the same stuff that all of these other people on commentary watch. But there was an era of wrestling where like you sell the match. Like you want everybody to believe that everybody has a chance of winning. And sometimes they'll make comments on commentary like, oh, Willow Nightingale will benefit so much from this. Like that line inherently means that she's going to lose.
Right.
You're already assuming that, oh, well, the outcome isn't going to go the way she wants, but man, what an experience it'll be. Whereas Taz is just like, we're in the middle of the damn match, and you're already pronouncing it as if she's going to have learned from a loss. And I think too many times, like the whole best in the world thing, there are some people, when they talk about how they're the best in the world, they're the best in the world because they win all the time. And then there's other people who are like, I'm the best in the world because I have 5-star classics and because I'm a technician in the ring. And I'm like, yes. The whole premise that we're talking about the internal side of what wrestling is, as opposed to what is being presented on the screen, which is supposed to be a competition to determine who the winner is. It's just such a discrepancy.
Yes.
It's that immersion breaker, which this is a different level of immersion breaking. But the thing that I was underwhelmed with was what Rampage actually was at all. Like, what was this Rampage show? What purpose did it serve other than filling a 1-hour slot on TNT on a Friday night? They have one of the biggest pay-per-views they've ever put on coming up. And it feels like no part of it was in service of promoting said pay-per-view. I mean,
I don't even remember a part being for the Forbidden Door. I gotta look back at my notes,
and I'm like looking through it, like other than when they announced the Forbidden Door lineup, what part of this promoted Forbidden Door? The John Moxley. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. No, I was just saying the only one was the video package with House of Black and Death Triangle, and the only reason I say that is because the winner gets to face one of the winners from New Japan. Like for that belt, but like that's the only.
That's a 4-way. So
that's
all the winners.
Isn't that on the Forbidden Door though? Or?
It is on the Forbidden Door, but it is a 4-way. They'll face all of the guys.
Right,
once,
right.
Not just.
But that was like the only time I thought I heard mentioned of like Forbidden Door.
I mean, I'm just looking at it. Like, don't get me wrong, Moxley and Dante Martin both. I mean, it was good, but they followed the ladder match, so the crowd didn't feel that excited to me. They did the Keith Lee and Swerve Strickland thing, which has nothing to do with Forbidden Door, and it might kind of be the start of something, but it had, again, nothing to do with Forbidden Door and just a segment. Like, it was just there. Max Caster was literally only booked on the show, it feels like, so that he could rap a line about Vince McMahon's NDA, which, like, again, I love Max Caster. The rap was funny, and I love the whole Gun Club and the Ass Boys and the Acclaimed being together, but I walked away from this thinking, like, the only purpose of this was so that he could use a snappy line in his rap. Like, there was no purpose to this. And it didn't last long, but still, like, the TBS title, I swear to God, if that's defended on the Forbidden Door, I'm going to be so furious because, again, this was a nothing happening match. You had the Chris Statlander stuff. It's just more of the same. And then Darby Allin defeating Bobby Fish in the main event. Like, it was like, it served a purpose and a story, but what does any of it have to do with Forbidden Door, which is one of the biggest shows you'll put on to date?
Right. And then, if there was, obviously more towards Forbidden Door, like the Keith Lee and Swerve Strickland isn't as exposed either.
Yeah.
Where that one, it was exposed.
Well, and I think the best way to look at it is like this. Think about your favorite sitcom. All of the episodes are all part of a long form story that plays out over 7 to 10 seasons if they're a very successful show, sitcom, drama, whatever, you name it. This show felt like someone took an episode of The Walking Dead from season 6 and randomly put it in the middle of season 3 as a flash forward just to like watch what else is going on later on in the show. Mm-hmm. And this is what this Rampage felt like. It felt more like, hey, remember, this is what else we have going on that you'll see later on. And these are all stories that are being continued, kind of. But it has nothing to do with the most important thing, that being what's going on right now.
Yep, next week.
So it might have been a good show, but it's not wrapped within the context needed for people to be able to appreciate, what it is as a show. So that it just felt like a waste of TV time given the time period that they're in right now. But
yeah, I agree.
But I know the other thing that we wanted to talk about was the tag team division. What are your thoughts there?
God, what just an incredible tag team division that AEW has. And I just thought, with the ladder match, they do so much and everyone's so incredible. Yet for the Forbidden Door, we don't even get the Young Bucks or like even Jurassic Express had a good match, but we got Roppongi Vice. Like I'm tired.
I know.
Like what does that do? I guess like because it just mixes one of each. Like what? I guess that's where I'm confused. Or AEW is such a strong tag team division that we could only muster up Roppongi Vice. I guess. I guess that's where my confusion is. But I want to praise AEW. Tag team division.
You see, Fish. They cannot put the Young Bucks in there and then set up a rematch between Great-O-Khan, Jeff Cobb, and FTR. When FTR pins Roppongi Vice and takes the IWGP heavyweight tag team titles, it then creates a situation where those two should wrestle one-on-one. But since FTR has already defeated them one time, it will just be for the IWGP heavyweight tag team titles. Something like that will happen. And the reason that this is the team selected is because there are politics involved where people don't want to see their champions pinned. So they're okay.
I know, but why can't we get someone else who's had, a strong body of work in AEW and put him in?
Because AEW probably doesn't want that person to take the pin.
Oh my gosh.
That's where shows like this have their issues. It's the same reason people like Andrade and the Lucha Brothers can't even appear on the show is because there's politics involved. So what do? You take a beloved New Japan figure in Rocky Romero and a guy that I guess people seem to like in Trent from AEW, and you can just pin one of them and no one will be upset. And both companies won't care because they don't care when those guys get pinned. They're there to serve a role. They serve it and they lose. And that's what it is. So I'm sure it'll be a great match, but that's what it is. And that's why you're not going to get Santana and Ortiz in that third role.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to get the Young Bucks in a winner take all because they're not going to do that. So that's what you get. And also,
that was just frustrating.
And kudos to Tony Khan. This is kind of a separate thing, and it's just like whatever. But the politics in the show and people who can and can't appear, he booked Penta in a match that, if he wins, would be on Forbidden Door, which means obviously Penta's not winning that match because he can't be on Forbidden Door.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry if you didn't know that and you listen to the show and you just had it spoiled.
You're listening to it early.
Blame the guy. If you're listening to a wrestling podcast this obscure, obviously you probably knew that already. So yeah, that's what's booked and we're going to have to watch it on TV and it'll be great and its effects will be somewhat lost because of that. But
it'll be a good match, but like you said, there's no magic being captured at that point.
Yep. But the other thing that I wanted to bring up was Will Ospreay being on American television. Like this guy, I think, and I stand to this day that he's the best in the world at what he does. And there are people that might be close to him, but nobody that exactly captures what he's able to capture when he's in there. And how good was this Dax Harwood match that was on Dynamite?
That was incredible.
Oh my God. Unbelievable. That was just,
Thank God Will Ospreay, does his thing because I can't stand FTR.
Yeah, I'm sure you were plenty happy about that. But yeah, I remember back when, and I don't even have that much to say on this. I just remember back Kenny Omega did like a question and answer thing on Twitter, and someone said, who from New Japan, if you could take anyone and just plop them on week-to-week television, would you like to have on AEW? And his answer was, I don't even know if he specifically named Will Ospreay or if it was just implied, and it was very obviously implied that it was Will Ospreay, but he basically said that he wanted Ospreay so that he could prove everybody wrong about how this guy is just some flippy dude who does crazy shit at big matches, and that's that. And we've already seen exactly what Kenny was talking about in the 3 weeks that he's been on.
He's been remarkable.
He has been, which is kind of a perfect segue into the final thing that we wanted to touch on before we bring on our guest TQ here. The Forbidden Door build. We've touched on it a little bit. I don't actually know your opinions on it. We merely agreed that this was important. I've been underwhelmed by it.
Yeah, I mean, I've been underwhelmed as well, considering the fact that we go from one show that's like full of New Japan and Forbidden Door to a show that literally doesn't have anything with New Japan or Forbidden Door. Like, we literally have gone every other show dedicated to it.
Yeah.
Instead of literally just stringing it all together. And I think that's, to me, it's just been frustrating watching it because I am excited for this. And it's just like, it's, putting a square peg into a circle hole. I mean, I
think a good way to say it is that when they announced the show, it had an audience already.
Yes.
Before the day that they said that this was happening, there was already a bunch of people who were going to buy this pay-per-view. And obviously the ticket sales speak for themselves as they continue to roll out sections that have seats in them that sell out immediately. But anyone who is on the fence about this, I can't honestly say that anything that they've done on TV has prompted you to want to buy the show. Like, unless someone is a really, really, really big Orange Cassidy fan and they've heard the myth of Will Ospreay and they want to really see what's going on here. Like, anyone who's interested in watching Jon Moxley versus Tanahashi, it just feels to me like they were already buying the show.
You're right.
Will Ospreay is the kind of guy you have a chance to capture in a whole bunch of people with, depending on who he's wrestling. And he's wrestling the most insider information wrestling type of wrestler that you can find. A guy who basically puts the gimmick of professional wrestling on display as part of his act. You could have paired that Will Ospreay with anybody, done 3 weeks of compelling angles, and made someone who might not have bought it simply because New Japan's name was attached to it go, I kind of want to see this guy that wrestled Dax Harwood wrestle Pac.
Right.
Or Buddy, or like, and I get it.
Yeah.
Orange Cassidy is a bigger star than a lot of these guys because of how he's been presented, but the list goes on and on of people who I would love to see Will Ospreay wrestle. I mean, Miro, Pac, any member of the House of Black. That's like 5 dudes off the top of my head without thinking. Hangman isn't going to win his match. Why can't he wrestle against Will Ospreay? This is like the number of people. Swerve, Keith Lee, any of these guys could have been in that spot and given just like this all-time pay-per-view.
Even
match.
Darby, like you were just talking
Darby
about.
Allin would have been fantastic. Yeah, I think picking Orange Cassidy for that match is a misfire because I was talking to my dad about it and we were sitting there going, well, the curiosity comes from us knowing how good Will Ospreay is and remembering the Orange Cassidy versus Pac match from that Revolution show the one year and saying, well, you know that the building is probably going to go absolutely bonkers for whatever they do. And it is Will Ospreay. So like the curiosity is our interest in seeing how that ends up. But it's like all the wrong kinds of curiosity. Like I would have been fine with not being curious knowing that Will Ospreay was wrestling Keith Lee and knowing, oh yeah, it'll be amazing. Like I didn't need the added curiosity of, oh, I wonder how and which way will it be amazing. Like,
right.
I don't know. That was a misfire for me.
Yep. I agree.
The build in general, I mean, I know it was a little bit rushed, but it's almost like AEW is too used to having as much time as they have between pay-per-views, because
time is of
the essence, and that Rampage show was a bunch of nothing that had to do with Forbidden Door. So
time has been not kind to AEW. No. Let's put it at that.
And you know what? We've talked about it a little bit before, but it's that whole thing where they don't want either of these shows to be looked at as A or B. They want them to look like they're on an equal playing field. But it feels almost like, no one's going to watch this Rampage, so we don't want to really announce anything big for Forbidden Door, so we're going to save it for Dynamite, which was the entire thing that they didn't want to have.
Right.
And that's what it feels like. We can just progress our stories outside of the scope of Forbidden Door on Rampage, because the only people watching are the people who really, really want to watch anyways. So, but yeah, lackluster build, it has felt like to me.
Yeah, I was going to say up and down. It's literally been peaks and valleys, because one show, it's all of it. Next show, none of it.
And you kind of hit the nail on the head with the addition of Roppongi Vice. Like, does it make sense in storyline? Sure. But we're not questioning whether or not it makes sense. We're questioning why, of all people, to shoehorn into this three-way, it's going to be Roppongi Vice. Like, that's the part that's being questioned.
I mean, hell, you could have thrown in Swerve and Keith Lee and have their, dysfunction going on.
Also, in the winner-take-all match for the three-way tag titles, the AAA belts are not on the line because of politics. They do not want.
I did see that.
Pay. So, like, even that is affected in some. You got Thunder Rosa versus Toni Storm, which Toni Storm has built her match against Thunder Rosa by feuding with Britt Baker. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I don't even get me started on that.
And they had a great match, and it was awesome. But god damn, and then you got that four-way for the Atlantic, where I already know the match. It's going to be Miro, Pac, Malachi Black, and Tomohiro Ishii. That's going to be the four-way, and then of course the AEW title match. And
we'll have to do maybe a predictions one of who we're gonna have. I still don't even know all the matches.
Yeah, I mean, odds are they'll announce 3 or 4 more Wednesday and Friday.
Yeah, a couple of days before the pay-per-view, and we still don't even know the lineup.
Yeah, a week exactly. It'll be this time next Sunday that we're watching it. But yeah, that's kind of the things we wanted to hit on. We are going to bring on our guest here in a moment, and we're going to go over Dynamite in a little bit more detail. Tyler, welcome to the show. We've kind of touched on a couple of topics already. So before we go into your live Dynamite experience, we'll put you on the spot and hit you with them real fast. The first thing we talked about was Vince McMahon. And everybody has been given the rundown on all the information that is out there. What's your take on all of this?
Honestly, I'm not totally surprised that something like this has come out.
Understatement of the year.
Yeah. I mean, you could say it's all storyline, but there's obviously been the odd stories, especially during the Attitude Era with all the divas and the women's wrestlers that are out there in the storylines that he's come up with. You could say what you want, if they were storylines or if they were real or if he came up with the ideas or writer, but it doesn't totally surprise me something like this is coming out, but hopefully it'll all end up being for the better, aka Steph and Triple H taking over. Cough.
Well, and it's funny that Stephanie has the exact same taste as her father, immediately deciding to book Roman Reigns versus Brock Lesnar for SummerSlam.
Yeah, for real. Yeah, it's going to be great.
Yeah, well, it might be. That's the thing. Like, it is Brock and Roman last man standing. Like, it could be.
Yeah.
Also, for anyone that happens upon this that thinks that making a storyline out of this is preposterous, I remind you that in the Attitude Era, there was actually a storyline on television where Vince was leaving his wife to be with Tori Wilson. And there was literal segments where they would catch Vince backstage conveniently with a camera that's perfectly positioned with what's going on. And he would be like flirting with her. And like he probably made out with her, if I'm remembering correctly. So like it wouldn't actually be the most preposterous story either. Like it's not out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah, it's crazy to see, like, even just from the business perspective, like with this coming down, if they try to turn this into storyline, that might be one of the most ridiculous things that they've ever done. Like the company's lost millions of dollars in stock, like, and if they try to make this a storyline for TV, that I think it's going to make it worse personally.
Well, before we move on, what did you think about his Friday Night SmackDown opening? How weird was that?
I thought it was weird he even came out. Like, I don't know how to run a business, especially publicly traded company, but dude, like, stay behind the scenes.
I'd imagine everything we learned would indicate that immediately appearing on TV is probably not in Damage Control 101.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so.
He just wanted to tell us what the intro to WWE stood for. That was about it.
He wanted to remind us that even if he's ended up ousted from his own company, to remember that we're with him forever.
Yeah,
no matter what.
Together.
The next bit kind of was sad information, but what have you been thinking about Jeff Hardy and everything that's gone on?
You know, it's really unfortunate. You know, he's obviously had these issues for a long time. I believe this is his third DUI in the last 10 years, stemming from whether it was because he had previous issues or whether it was because, you know, that's how he dealt with the pain of being a wrestler, especially with all the spots and the big bumps that he would take. You know, it's really sad to see that keep happening. I'm of the opinion that I'm hoping that he has one more run and then like just kind of a swan song, and then he needs to be done, both from probably a mental and personal level, but also just like, even if he did, I've heard rumors that he had a concussion right at the beginning of his last match on AEW that, you know, caused that match to look so bad, but it just didn't look good. Even the first couple that he had in AEW just didn't look good. I think he needs to have one last swan song and then he should probably be done.
Yeah, I think that there's a firm camp of three people when it comes to the Hardy Boys on TV right now, and it's the people who are willing to look past the fact that these guys are so banged up and in their 40s. There are the people that are not willing to look past it and are completely holding it against them, and then there's the people that just hope that they don't die every single time they go out there,
right?
And that they get their swan song, which I think they were in the middle of. So hopefully they can come back and actually finish it, but I don't know how much longer either of them need to be doing it.
Yeah, I mean, if they were to come back, Young Bucks would probably be the best team for them to do it against if they were going to win the title one last time. So still could happen. We'll see how long it takes for him to may or may not come back.
Lastly, Sasha Banks. What do you got?
You know, I haven't followed this story a whole lot. I do agree that she's one of the best right now, maybe ever, from the women's division. It's really sad to see that there's some kind of issues going on. I did read on somewhere that she didn't even want to do the whole tag team thing, but she decided that if this is what it was going to be, then she was going to make the best out of it. And then was it a 4-way or a 6-way that they were supposed to be in? And that's what caused them to walk out. And she was going to do the job for somebody. Mm-hmm. Yeah, she was supposed to do the job for somebody.
She was supposed to do the job for her tag team partner that she was championed with, and then it was supposed to end in both of them getting their their championship match, both obviously losing to Ronda Rousey. And then the thing that I had heard was when she asked, "Okay, then what?" they had no answer for her. And then when she pressed them again to say, "Okay, so we finish all of this, then what happens?" they were like, "We don't know." And she was just like, okay, well, I'm not doing this if there's no direction. I think we had touched on earlier, her biggest thing was she just wants the things. She gets a bad rep, but at the end of the day, all of her arguments stem from where's the direction? And if there was a direction, then most of her gripes are answered, but there never really is.
Yeah, I think that's one of the main problems that I think that we see over and over again from WWE Creative is that they have direction, but for maybe 3 people? And the rest they're just kind of filler. And to support those 3 people, whether that's, you know, Ronda, Charlotte, Roman, Brock, I would say that's probably
Gunther now.
Yeah, Gunther. Yeah, I would say those are probably maybe the 3 or 4 people that they're really like, you know, here's where we're gonna go with them, and then everybody else you're gonna take up TV time and just be there. It is. I mean, it's been like this for a while now, but it's still never great to see.
And honestly, it's really not any different than it has been the entire time the WWE has existed. The wrestling business as a whole, way back in the day, was always built on whoever the champion was. If the title match on the big show was something people were interested in, then they had no problem selling a lot of tickets. And yes, there were other great wrestlers on the show, but that didn't actually sell any of the tickets. Because if there wasn't a strong title match, people wouldn't go. And other wrestling companies either died or evolved, but still the one today that is built on the top couple of people, and that's it. And even now, even more so now, it's like the brand is even bigger than those few people to a degree, with the exception maybe being Ronda Rousey and Brock Lesnar, because they got their fame from elsewhere. Right. But the brand is bigger than a lot of those guys. And so it's just more so than any other company, and it seems to be how it's always been. Where do you think Sasha Banks ends up? What's next for her if she ends up getting her release, if that's what happens?
I think she either decides to be done and goes to Hollywood, or she's going to be WWE. I don't see her going to AEW. I think that she'd put on some great matches, but just from the character work that we've seen from her, I just don't think that fits that platform and that product. Personally, I think she goes Hollywood.
Yeah, and if Hollywood isn't calling right now, the better way to get into it is to be in WWE, obviously. Yep. But wanted to get your thoughts on those. Really, we brought you on here because you were live at AEW Dynamite last week for the big ladder match and the hair match. So what we're going to do here is we're going to kind of quickly run through all of the major parts of the show, and we'll kind of get your live perspective from it. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
All right, so the first thing was the hair versus hair match, and we'll get your Fish. First of all, what did you think of the hair versus hair match and how that all went down?
I honestly thought it was very nice to see Ortiz wrestling. I felt like it's been a while since we've seen anyone like Santana or Ortiz kind of wrestle. But I definitely thought it was a very solid match. Definitely some good back and forth. Jericho is doing some things that, he's kind of went away from, but he's got the Hurricane Rana he keeps trying to do. But I really appreciated seeing Ortiz kind of wrestle again. So,
Tyler, did the crowd atmosphere capture the full effects of the fact that one man was going to lose his hair this night?
I think they did. I think the excitement, one, of having all the Jericho Appreciation Society ringside, and just it added a lot to the match, I think. But I liked at the same time that they didn't get really involved. So the presence was there, and obviously Eddie was on the side of Ortiz. Eddie was, by the way, was crazy, like over, if you want to use that term.
Yeah.
He was getting chants left and right. The crowd was going nuts. I rewatched Dynamite the other day, so I could see the TV perspective. It was much louder in that arena than it came across on TV. Eddie was getting a lot of cheers, and well deserved. But I think having the Jericho Appreciation Society ringside was a really nice touch. It was the ending, and we may get to that here in a second, that I had a little bit of beef with.
Okay, so that's what I was going to ask you about next, because I actually was watching and sat there and said, if this guy doesn't unmask and be somebody else, I'm going to be fucking pissed that Fuego del Sol is how this match ended. How did that come across?
Yeah, it took me a second. So whenever he came out, I said, wait, why is Fuego here? Like, that's the most random person possible to ever join that group, first of all, if it was Fuego. And then right before he took off the mask, he put his tongue out like Sammy does. And I was like, that's Sammy. That is 100% Sammy. And then took off the mask, and then the crowd went nuts. The Sammy Sucks was incredibly loud in the arena.
Yeah, sounded like it.
Yeah, and the one thing that sadly didn't come across very well was Ortiz saying blood and guts over and over again. That did not get any type of reaction from the crowd whatsoever. I don't know if at that point, we were so focused on Sammy and that pop just kind of took away from it, or if the emotion didn't really come through in the arena. I'm not really sure what it was, but it did not get any type of reaction.
The next big thing that we saw was the Wardlow 20-on-1 handicap match, and I'm just going to say this right now. I hated this. Fish, what was your thought?
I mean, it definitely would have gotten a better reaction if it wasn't like a week before Forbidden Door. So I think that's kind of where my issue kind of stands with this. It's just like, I think it's been AEW's kind of problem with building towards Forbidden Door. Is just I don't understand this being there.
Tyler, how confused were you in the building? Because I was confused watching on TV when he was stacking people and people were eliminated 4 at a time.
The announcers and the timekeeper didn't even know what was going on. You could see. I had a view right towards them because I was sitting kind of. So you think hard cam side? I'm sitting to the right of where the camera faces. So I had a direct view right into kind of diagonal from the timekeeper and the ring announcer. They didn't know what was going on. The count that they were trying to give of like plaintiff 1, 2, and 3 was completely off. It was a fun match to watch just because it was just Wardlow power bombing people all over the place. But besides that, it was a mess, absolute mess.
Yeah, I was quite confused.
Just to give Wardlow the Guinness World Record book of most power bombs in a match? Like I don't.
Right.
Yeah.
I wonder if he actually achieved that. We'll have to investigate. I'll have to hire an investigator for research. One thing that wasn't confusing at all though was how freaking awesome the Will Ospreay Dax Harwood match was. I already talked about it, and me and Fisher already talked about it. So Tyler, how great was that match in the building?
It was incredible. I think it was the most 50-50 split I've ever heard of who was cheering for who. It was Will Ospreay was just getting it was honestly an amazing match. I'm speechless about it. I'm still thinking about it today. It was incredible, and I think Dax doesn't get enough credit for how good of a singles wrestler he is too, just because FTR is obviously so they're just a prolific tag team, but they're both just incredible singles wrestlers as well. And the fact that he could keep up with somebody like Will Ospreay it made the match that much better. Because I don't think anybody, at least in the arena, really expected it to be that great of a match.
I mean, they must not have seen too much Will Ospreay, if that was the expectation, because I've already gushed about him enough. But yeah, I think the depths that he has as a wrestler, as far as all the aspects of doing this, are so vastly understated. At the end, you had all those guys come out and they attacked Dax, and Roppongi Vice came out to join the brawl. And then I didn't really hear. I don't know if I just didn't have my mic or my volume turned up loud enough, but what was the reaction to the Orange Cassidy Will Ospreay face off? Because
it was probably the loudest pop of the night.
God damn it. Fuck.
It was amazing. I've heard this whole rumor that it was originally supposed to be Andrade. Personally, I'm more excited about Orange Cassidy.
God, fuck you, Tyler.
I love Orange Cassidy. I think he's great. He's a great wrestler, but I just love the character as well. And putting him with a guy that like Will Ospreay is they're going to make an amazing match.
Yeah, we talked about it earlier. I don't doubt it'll be amazing, and they'll do something pretty incredible. But there's just too many names that I put ahead of Orange Cassidy as far as I must see a Will Ospreay match.
Well, let me interject real quick. I want to know a question for Tyler was, how are the headbutts? Those were just incredible to see on TV. How was that in person, just witnessing that?
The first two, I didn't see what was going on, like, because they were just so close already. It looked like they were just kind of facing off. But then after, I think probably the first two, you finally noticed that they were headbutting, and then the crowd went wild. It was one of those things. It was awesome.
I hate the goddamn headbutts. They're insane. Speaking of someone who's insane, so they did the John Moxley face-off, and Moxley, the gist of it was that, Tanahashi will have to call him ace by the end. But speaking of people who have lost their mind, the Wizard, Chris Jericho, interrupted all of this, and this whole segment was a schmaz. What was the live reaction to this?
When he came out, it was awesome. The crowd loved it in that first part, like, I'm a wizard. Like that, it made everybody laugh. That was awesome. By the end of it, like, I agree with you, it ended up being a little bit of a mess. By the end of it, when he started talking about what the match was going to be at Forbidden Door, there were a few names that I'm sure by more hardcore wrestling fans are well known. But like I didn't know a couple of the names that he was saying. Like, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. That'll probably be a good match just because they're New Japan guys. And I would assume that they're not going to put a nobody from New Japan in a match like that. So I'm sure it's going to be great. But at the same time, I'm just like, okay, it's going to be another, what was it, trios match, or is it 5 versus 5? Something along those lines. Yeah, trios.
Yeah, trios match.
Yeah. But, at the beginning of the segment was awesome. I think just because of probably a little bit of language barrier with Tanahashi, that Mox had to carry that segment. If there was a little bit of back and forth, that would have been a little bit better. The shut up from Tanahashi to Jericho was great.
Yes.
But yeah, I agree. By the end of it, it was a little bit of a mess.
Yeah, and to provide a little background, as I know you're not the biggest New Japan full show watcher, and for those of you that might not be, a lot of the New Japan shows, the entire undercard for a lot of it is trios matches or 4-on-4s and sometimes even 5-on-5s. And theirs is really built where the whole show builds and that the last match is almost always the best match. And there will be like 3 important title matches at the end. And that's kind of, unless it's like a Wrestle Kingdom where all the titles are defended, then. So that's kind of where this random 6-man comes from, because it is a joint show. So you're going to get a little bit of what New Japan would do as well. That's kind of where that comes from.
Yep.
What, on TV, the Miro versus Ethan Page match, I was kind of sitting there like, okay, can we get to the point where Miro just destroys this guy? And then when that happened, I was thrilled. But the rest of it, I didn't care too much for. It wasn't bad. I was just like, come on, let's go. There's no way Ethan Page is beating him.
Yep. I think everybody in the crowd felt the same way. There's no way that Miro was losing that match.
No.
And it showed by the energy, especially because we knew that the ladder match was coming up soon. At that point, the crowd was just like, okay, this is going to be a good match just because both of these guys are good wrestlers, but Miro's winning.
There was just kind of saving the energy for the main event.
Yeah, there was no suspense. There was no suspense at all to that match. Everybody knew it was going to be Miro, and we were at that point ready for the ladder match.
Yeah, and there was still stuff to go too. So yeah. Britt Baker finally took her loss. We've been waiting for this forever.
Forever.
Yeah, so long. Toni Storm beat her. I joked with Fish that Thunder Rosa is fighting Toni Storm for the AEW women's title at this pay-per-view, and the way they've built it is they've had Toni Storm feud with Britt Baker instead.
Yeah.
But she finally picked up the win, and the one thing I was curious about the most as far as watching the match live was on TV, for the way I watched the matches, Toni Storm nearly killing Britt Baker and then them selling it like she was dead came across like $1 million on TV. What was you guys in the crowd's reaction?
That match did nothing for me.
See, that was the only part of the match that really hit for me. I didn't think it got its due because of where it was placed on the show and because of some of the commercial stuff. But that part, many people have done it and it never comes across good. I thought that part actually was sold well.
Yeah, the ending didn't do a whole lot for me. I can't really tell you why. I was at the point where, okay, Britt's like, I'm surprised that she didn't come out with the Owen Hart belt. Quite honestly, I know that was a few weeks ago. But I would think that if she's not running with the title, you might as well put that on her and have her, at least gloat about it, especially if she's supposed to be heel, like talk herself up.
Yeah, I guess I didn't even catch that. That's a good call.
Yeah, I mean, you're not even playing to her ego, and she's supposed to be a heel, and like she's supposed to be doing the whole, like Adam Cole won the men's part. Like I know they're looking at Forbidden Door and everything, but in my mind, like have that be something. It's kind of at this point, at least in the last couple of weeks, I feel like they haven't even talked about it or really made it that shine at all. But yeah, the end of that match just didn't do a whole lot for me. I think when the 1, 2, 3 hit, the crowd was excited that Tony had won. But like the just those kind of closing moments of that match, it didn't do a whole lot, at least for me.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't necessarily have it coming across to me as they were exploding and jumping out of their seats either, but they were excited that Tony did win.
Yep,
I was.
Yeah, well, you were a fan of this one?
I was. Well, I mean, just at least Toni Storm winning. I'm tired of seeing Britt Baker win.
and you know what? You made the comment about how Britt Baker is supposed to be the heel, and it's funny because then this is actually a huge compliment to her. Britt Baker is Chris Jericho. he can do the most vilely disgusting, horrible things. I mean, he burned a man's face, and yet still the crowd doesn't want to do anything but sing his song and cheer for him when he says that he's a wizard, because it's funny and he's Chris Jericho. Like, that's what Britt Baker is. She's Britt Baker. She's the dentist. She's the DMD. Like, she's already at a point where, like, I don't know what they're actually going to be able to do to get people to boo her all the time. They're always going to kind of like her.
Yeah, the crowd very, like, wholeheartedly hit the DMD with her during her entrance. It was, if I didn't know any better, I wouldn't have known that she was supposed to be a heel.
It's usually how it works out.
Yeah.
The next big thing on the show was the Hangman Page promo, where Adam Cole interrupted. Jay White snuck in from the rear and destroyed Hangman Page. And just, I have to, for a second, just because it's going to make me feel better. We tried to restructure this show in a way where I wasn't talking about all the things that didn't make sense to me, and I didn't go into fits of rage. But if your name was Adam this week and you worked for AEW, it was not a good week for you.
No, it wasn't.
Hangman already not looking the best by admitting, self-admission, he hadn't considered that Okada might not be champion. That even though Adam Cole fucking reminded him of that in the promo, didn't cross his mind, admitted it, not the best. Then Adam Cole comes out, interrupts him, and Jay White fucks him up from behind at Hangman Page. Then Jay White points out that he's not getting a title match, so he can go ahead and wrestle Okada. But as Adam Cole said, Okada won't be there, so that's not going to happen. Then Jay White points out that he's 2-0 against Hangman, so if there is a title match, it will not be him getting it. And then he tells Adam Cole, oh yeah, you're not getting it either, which that part was quite hilarious. I thought it was funny. Adam Cole's reaction was perfect. But yeah, both Adams wore it on the chin in this segment. Jay White reigns supreme over all. I love Jay White. And so that's what happened. What Tyler first live, what were your thoughts?
As soon as Hangman came out, first of all, great pop.
Yeah, everyone loves Hangman.
Mm-hmm. I think he's a great wrestler. And Matt, you and I talked about this the other day. I'm not a huge fan of his character work. He's a great wrestler. He's going to put on great matches every time he goes out there. But I think he wasn't well represented during his title reign. They had bigger stars. You know, there's always the CM Punk, like he's going to get camera time no matter what, whether he was champ or not. But you know, how many matches did Hangman actually have over, what was it, almost close to a year of having that title? It felt like he had like maybe 6. At least,
and he had more. Like. It's just they're forgettable. Like there were some random ones in there. Right,
exactly. I thought as soon as Hangman came out, which was not advertised, at least from what I saw, of Hangman coming out, so there was a total surprise that he did. As soon as he came out, I thought, no way Okada's here. There's no chance that Okada is here tonight. And then whenever I remembered that Jay had won, I'm like, okay, could Jay have that quick of a turnaround to get back to the States too? And then he showed up. So it was a little predictable. I think, I don't know what happened, whether Hangman was actually just being dumb or if, you know, whoever's doing the booking over in New Japan just didn't tell Tony, you know, hey, Jay's going to win the match. Make sure that Hangman doesn't say something stupid.
Well, here, hang on, because this is an important piece of information.
Okay.
Okada's wife is scheduled to give birth less than a week after the Forbidden Door show takes place. And the day of the Forbidden Door show, I believe, it's Okada's wife's birthday. So all of that stuff was known well in advance.
Okay.
I don't know if Tony knew, but the general public, like when the show was first announced, the Wrestling Observer Radio audio was like, yeah, this is it's going to be a tough situation for Okada. We don't know if he'll actually go. So it's not like it hadn't been out there that it would be a tough time for him to get on that show. So
yeah, I was really excited when Switchblade came out. About probably 45 seconds before it did, I was freaking out about that he was going to come out with the guy I was with. I was with my buddy David watching the show. And then with Adam being out there, I agree that the whole, well, you're not going to get the title shot, but neither are you. That was a little messy. But let me pose a question to you two. Who's facing Jay White? Who do you think it is? I got a hot take on this one.
Oh, I think that, and I think I might have been a little spoiled on this already. I never know for sure, and it's not set in stone, but I have heard from good authority that it's probably just going to be a three-way with all three of those guys, and Jay White's going to be forced into it on one of the two shows this week. Or it'll be a tag match, and there won't be a title match. But they did say it would be on the show, so that would be a big error if it ended up not being.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was going to end up being a tag match where it was Hangman and someone versus Switchblade and Adam Cole. That's kind of where I was thinking at that point, was they're just going to have to team up. So,
yeah, but if there is a title match, if you had to pick somebody under the gun, who are you picking?
Wow. Well, he wouldn't wrestle, but it would have been Andrade.
Oh, yeah. Well, it kind of wouldn't work, I guess.
Yeah, it wouldn't work.
So my hot take on this, which I don't think is going to happen, but the hopeful wrestling fan in me wants it to happen. Kenny's coming out of nowhere.
I mean, that would be great.
I would absolutely love that. I don't think it's going to happen. I'm not super hopeful for it.
I can't let my hopes get up in that direction.
I know. It hurts me a little bit to even say that out loud. But I think that would be insane. Like, I don't know if they do like just an unknown, like you're not going to know who I'm going to face until the time comes or whatever. But if Kenny came out, that would be the most insane thing.
If they don't announce his opponent before the show, I will be pretty sold on the idea that it's Kenny Omega.
Yeah.
It'd be Cody Rhodes making his AEW return.
Cody has more power over there than we know.
Yeah, Vince has decided that he wants to open up his own forbidden door, and he's going to.
Vince's mind Cody is actually gone now, and he's sending a guy.
Yeah, he doesn't want to let Tony outdo him.
Something that was insane and no one can question it was the ladder match. This was one of those matches. I'll throw it to Fish first, and then Ty bring us home with the live perspective. But the only way I can sum up this match is this was one of those ones where I held my breath, hoped nobody would die, and then thanked God that they did not let the Hardys into this mess.
Yeah, no, the Hardys would have actually severely injured themselves. I mean, thank God they didn't let the Lucha Bros in this one either. I mean, God forbid him and the Young Bucks would have just killed each other. But yeah, it was a really good match, really hard hitting. Some of those table ones were incredibly dangerous. The Destroyer was awesome, of course, but
those 4 tables that were set up outside, when I saw they were set up outside and there was a spot where they were all on the ladders, I looked at it and I was like, yeah, that's not close enough. But then they didn't actually use them until way later. But my heart was racing until someone safely fell through those tables because I was worried about that the whole time.
He actually overshot the
a little bit on TV. He landed safely, but from where you described your seats are, I could see that being like a complete heart-stopping moment.
Yeah, at that point, it didn't even look like he broke through that bottom table that was closest to the ring. It didn't look like he even touched that table, so I thought he overshot it a little bit. It was a little scary. But yeah, the whole match, the crowd was great. Every single moment got some kind of reaction from the crowd. That match left me speechless. I think it could have gone either way as far as who was going to be the winner. I was leaning Young Bucks, but I think it could have gone either way. I think they did a really good job of not really playing their hand, of showing like who's really on top here until the very end. It was a great match all around. I have no beef whatsoever with it.
The best matches are the ones where you truly don't know who come out on top. And I mean, unfortunate circumstances, but when a team is removed from a match like this, it really does call into question who's actually going to win. Yeah. And I thought it was going to be the Hardys until they were removed. And since I thought the belts were coming off of Jurassic Express anyways, I kind of thought the Young Bucks were going to win, but I did not know for sure. And how many times I've predicted Jurassic Express downfall only for them to prevail. I've been way more wrong than I've been right. So
yeah, I agree. I thought the Hardys were going to win it whenever the match was first advertised. And then when they were taken off the show, I thought I'm leaning Young Bucks here, but at the same time, yeah, they've won matches where I thought the other team was going to win. Jurassic Express could have pulled it out of nowhere.
Incredibly dangerous, probably super fun to watch. Tyler, I know you've been to this one, and we went to a show together. Fish, we've been to a show together. I've been to many AEW shows. For those who haven't been, Tyler, what do you recommend an AEW show after having been to a live Rampage and a live Dynamite? What do you think?
Absolutely. It's like even down to the point of Tony comes out during the commercials to try to pump up the crowd. I think that is just one of the most awesome small touches that AEW does, is that Tony comes out onto the stage and just pumps everybody up. And he's the most energetic, ridiculous person, but at the same time, you can't help but get pumped up with him. So yes, a live show of AEW, absolutely 100% recommend.
They do go out of your way to make it pretty fun.
Yeah.
But anyways, as the first official guest from the Gould-Fish Pod, Tyler, thanks for coming on and giving us your perspective, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
And we'll have you on again in the future, I'm sure.
Sounds good.
Take care. Special thanks to Tyler.
Yeah, huge shout out to Tyler.
All right. We're going to close things out here, starting with the latest edition of the Gould-Fish Top 5 rankings. Fish, who's going first this week?
I will go first.
All right, go ahead.
So number 5 is the Forbidden Door.
Okay. All
right. It's been, having some quality wins, but also quality losses too. So it's, kind of teetering at the 50% marker, but enough to take the 5 spot for me.
Okay. Yeah. It's the big time, but you still got to see it come through in the end.
Yes.
All right. Well, sticking at number 5 from a week ago, actually, let me just verify real quick that this is actually the way that I had it a week ago. Yeah. Same as last week, number 5, me. I'm staying in at number 5, and here's why. Last week, I had said that in order to maintain my top 5 ranking, I was going to have to do more. I had seen a regression drop me from 3 to 5. Well, this week, we mixed up the format, trying new things, being willing to fail, boost it up a little bit. Also, I had predicted long ago a Bryan Danielson-Zack Sabre Jr. match, and all signs indicate that that's what we are going to get. So also props to me. I also beat Fish in disc golf.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm surprised that you had yourself as low as number 5.
Well, like I said, I had to do a lot to maintain. I was kind of hanging on past accomplishments to that 5 spot last week. Didn't bring anything new to the table, but there was just other people who performed even better. So I'm at number 5. Who do you got it for?
Number 4, a huge week, and especially one episode, and it's going to be Team Taz on Rampage, because they dominate Rampage like no other faction in AEW.
It is their show.
I mean, you have Taz, you have Hobbs, you have Starks, and Hook all on Rampage. Tell me another faction that gets everyone on Rampage.
They've invaded commentary. Half the commentary team is Team Taz.
Yes. I mean, it's remarkable what they're doing. I said, I have in parentheses, Dynasty on Rampage.
You're going to hate my number 4.
Oh, okay.
My number 4 is FTR.
Yeah, I do hate that.
Also because they're about to bring home IWGP Gold. Hopefully beat the Young Bucks, and they'll have all major titles at once that they are able to acquire at least. I just think once that happens, they'll be number 1. But since they're on the road there, they've snuck into my top 5.
Yeah.
And on top of that, they have gotten to a point where their affinity for tag team wrestling, how much they love tag team wrestling, they're viewed as a tag team so much so that anytime one of them does something in regards to singles action, it's almost like a credit to both of them because they're so associated.
That is very true.
Which that is taking things to a new level. So they've slid into my top 5 here, leapfrogging me, but I'm happy with that. That's fine. They're number 4 this week.
There you go. So for my number 3, and another explosive week that really just had quality wins left and right, and I would have to say it was Taz on commentary.
Okay, all right.
Taz on commentary talking about how people are here to win and being just brutally honest and just giving that hot take, and not even a hot take, just giving that take to just William Regal, Chris Jericho, whoever, was just like, yeah, I don't care. They're here to win. Like, what?
I'm going to force you to make a distinction here, though.
Okay.
Is just the Taz that appears on commentary number 3, or are we going to just go full on and give Taz the number 3 spot? Which one is it?
I will have to say is the Taz on commentary because I've already looped him into Team Taz.
Okay, fair.
So the Taz on commentary.
All right, I just wanted to make sure we had that distinction.
I appreciate that distinction.
My number 3, dropping down a little bit, but still in a spot that he should be. Actually, I'm just kidding.
Oh.
He's back into the top 5. It was 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, he had a spot. He fell out. He's back in now. Coming in at number 3, Jon Moxley. Because he's got everything working his way. He's going to be the first ever 2-time AEW champion. Don't get me wrong. This is a gimmick list, but Jon Moxley is number 3 for all of the real reasons. Probably going to become the first ever 2-time AEW world champion. Mm-hmm. Finally going to get Tanahashi after all this time. That's the guy he's always wanted. Finally going to get a chance to beat him. Still a focal point on the show. Going to be in a blood and guts match. He's number 3. That's what we're going.
And you'll get the CM Punk match.
And eventually we will get the CM Punk match, which, fun fact, that isn't really that fun because most people already know this. CM Punk brought the Shield in.
Yes.
John Mox. So, full circle.
Definitely a full circle. So, for my number 2, this came out of left field, out of nowhere. You ready for it?
Yes.
It is going to be Fortnite.
Oh.
And here's my reasoning. I think Tony Khan has been playing a lot of Fortnite.
Okay.
And the no builds, because that is carried over to AEW Dynamite and AEW Rampage. He has been playing no builds Fortnite too much, and it's been carrying over. So Fortnite taking a huge leap into the wrestling scene.
Now, I don't want you to give any spoilers away, so just give me a look if I'm right here. Is that analogy your number 1 on the list?
No, it's not, but it was in contention. It was in contention.
If I had heard it before, it would be on mine. But my number 2 is the Bryan Danielson Award. Because even though it won't go formally stated, for me, if those two guys wrestle, the award is on the line. Winner gets to keep the name. Yeah. And so I don't think there's ever been a brighter light shined on that award. This will be probably the only time it's in the top 5. But it's skyrocketed up to number 2. We'll see how it maintains.
Huge week
for the Bryan Danielson Award. The two guys who constantly won the award year after year, finally clashing.
It's the two juggernauts you've been waiting to see.
Yep.
It's dynasty versus dynasty.
Yep.
So for my number 1, and unfortunately, it will probably be shifted out of the number 1. But it is the Destroyer.
Oh, gosh. This thing is hung on.
And it's hung on. And unfortunately, since I did say if I didn't see a Mexican Destroyer on Forbidden Door, it was coming out. I thought
you said last week, but that's okay.
Well, we did see the Young Bucks do it against...
True. Yep, you're right.
Then
it maintained.
The Luchasaurus. So it maintained, but...
The Lucha Destroyer.
But yeah, we're not going to see the Mexican Destroyer out on Forbidden Door, so I will officially retire it. It's been number 1 for the longest time, but since we can't get Rey Fenix or Penta Oscuro on Forbidden Door,
well,
it's a farewell tour. This is its week. It's the retirement tour.
It's going to be done.
It's going to be dethroned.
Maintaining his spot as my number 1 is Jay White. He's only gone on to do more. He's buried 2 Adams at the same time, which talk about 2 birds, 1 stone. He has also appeared on the local news.
He did. I did see that.
And the reporter knew his finishing move, knew the Blade Runner. And also he pointed out that both times that he has captured the IWGP Heavyweight Championship, he's captured it at just the right time. Just in time to sell out Madison Square Garden and the United Center. Single-handedly. That's the most important part. So he's only added to his resume in the last week and even revealed some stuff that maybe hadn't even been clear yet. So he's my number 1.
Well, I was going to say, he's also... So he's 2-0 against Kenny Omega, yet 2-0 against Hangman Adam Page. Is that correct?
Yes.
Was that what I heard? Wow. A lot of 2-0s.
Yep. He's unstoppable, man. But he maintained his number one ranking, holding firm.
Yeah, he's got a firm grasp on that one.
So that's the top 5 for the week. We're going to talk match of the week now here. Fish, what was your match of the week and why was it the ladder match?
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know why there wouldn't be any other match besides the ladder match. That was truly incredible. And it's really what Young Bucks do. You know, it's just put on 5-star matches.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, it really is. And there's one thing that I love about their ladder matches, and we've talked about this before, is that someone's actively climbing a ladder, and that puts it into a whole different perspective.
Unless it's actually not safe to be climbing. And even in some cases where it is safe to be climbing, they make sure that people are down before they start. And then there are times where they're like, oh, fuck, I'm tired. I just got to go up there and grab those belts. And they're not paying attention. And the two guys are rearing and ready to go. So the story behind the ladder match just always feels like it's on a level that no one else quite captures. Like when they do the casino ladder matches, it never feels like this.
Yeah, I mean, you can call them basically, I think Excalibur said the master of ladders or whatever. But
they did call them that in a match that the Hardys were supposed to win.
Yes, and I mean,
funny.
There's also a thing. Well, we talked about, I don't know, might have been 2 or 3 weeks ago, the match against the Lucha Bros. If you want to get someone hot,
yeah, you want to get the Young Bucks hot, have them beat the Lucha Bros, and then have them have a couple more matches, and then just throw the titles on them, and you're good.
And you can do the same thing for the Lucha Bros, and it works every time.
Every time. Not a lot to say. We went in depth when we talked to Tyler. Hands down the match of the week. Fish, you got any closing thoughts here?
I just hope, this week is really dedicated to, Forbidden Door. I would like to see, a show like 75% towards the Forbidden Door. So I think that's, my biggest concern, but I'm also cautiously optimistic that Tony will make the adjustment for that.
In the 11th hour, usually they bring it home. Hopefully this is no different.
Yes.
Well, for the Gould-Fish Pod, I'm Matt Gould.
And I'm Ryan Fish.
And we're donezo. Peace, people.